2025 has been an incredibly good year for Elite Dangerous already, but things are about to get a whole lot bigger and, in fact, much larger than you might think. Not just in terms of content releases, but really in a fundamental way. The game is becoming no longer just a shared world space sim, it's evolving into something far more ambitious. Both Trailblazers and the next update Vanguard are not just mere updates. What they're aiming to do is reshape Elite into a much larger and more dynamic game. For the past 10 years or so, Elite has always been a game about being a background actor, and David Braben and Frontier have said as much, as players in an NPC-driven universe. All of that is about to end. Instead, Elite is now shifting toward a future where player actions have a permanent and far-reaching consequence on the entire galaxy. And the latest update to the game, Trailblazers, released on the 26th of February to high praise and has already been very successful. Now, if we head on over to Steam charts, we can see there's been a massive jump in player numbers over the past few months. We're now reaching some of the highs in terms of player numbers that we saw in Elite many years ago. So Frontier are working very hard here and rebuilding the player base. Now, last week, that wasn't the only thing that happened. There was also massive announcements on the future content for Elite that included a roadmap as well as a few details of the next update, which is called Vanguards. So today I'm going to talk a bit about why I think the future for Elite is very bright, and why it might well be a bigger event than many people had been expecting. Let's start with that roadmap. It's broken down into 5 phases. We've already had phase 1, in fact that's going on right now, the release of Trailblazers. Next up, phase 2 is the release of a ship, Corsair. Then the big one, this is the summer update. Phase 3, it is Vanguards. Following on from that is another ship release in phase 4. And then in the winter, there is a new feature. This will be a big update for the game, hopefully, along the lines of either Trailblazers or Vanguard. But as yet, it is entirely unnamed. Now, what makes this a particularly big deal is that Frontier are detailing that there are 3 big updates to be releasing this year. Now, to be fair here, I guess it should be pointed out that Trailblazers was originally meant to be released at the end of last year, so technically, I guess you could argue, if you're splitting hairs, that we're getting 2 updates this year, but the actual reality is, yes, there are 3 updates, so that makes it a very big year for the game indeed. What's more, they're not just adding little bits of content here and there, but it seems they're working on a coordinated plan to really expand what Elite Dangerous is all about. And let's break that down for a bit. With Trailblazers, we got Colonization. Now, this is a feature that a lot of people have been asking for a very long time, and it's the ability to expand the bubble. Put space stations and civilization, economies, and war zones, all the rest of it, into new systems that are currently empty. And this will continue over time as the bubble continues to expand. But not only that, this has been combined with somewhat of a new foundational feature, at least in my opinion, which is base building. So that makes this update very important because it puts the expansion of the bubble, this whole colonization system, directly into the player's hands. Players become what's known as a system architect, and that means you get to direct and dictate where space stations are situated, what type of space stations are put down. You can situate and locate planetary outposts, and then also determine what type of economy that star system is going to run. The bottom line here is that as a player, you get to really put your mark on the galaxy and directly influence how the overall game changes and expands over time. It's also worth mentioning that you're not limited to just one star system here. Once you've got an initial star system all set up and complete, you can move on and design a second star system, a third star system, and so on and so forth. It's just that you can only really have one initial setup going on at a time. The broader picture here then is that what this means is players have a direct and permanent impact on the galaxy. This isn't just about going out and collecting a mission or collecting various different resources. It's not about upgrading your ship or even doing a community goal. All of those things are transitional. Once they're done and you log out, they don't really have a permanent impact on the galaxy. Sure, you could make a point that perhaps community goals do, to an extent at least some of them, but by and large, not really, and you're not doing these as a singular player at any rate. But what Trailblazers has fundamentally changed here is that as a lone, single individual player, you can make a permanent indelible mark upon the galaxy itself, something that will affect all other players. That other players can interact with, and that really is a dramatic shift and a massive change for the game. It seems though that this isn't just an isolated update. Instead, Frontier are expanding things even further, and this is going to happen with the summer update Vanguard, which is, as Frontier themselves say, is a spiritual successor to Squadrons. In other words, the bottom line seems to be that Frontier are introducing the whole concept of guilds here, guilds that you'll find in other online games. Now, of course, as it stands right now, you can form a squadron in Elite Dangerous. You can basically create a huge group of players, but this has limited effects and limited capabilities. Frontier are dramatically improving this whole concept. I'll run through a very quick list of bullet points here. Essentially, what we've got is improved communication. So this will be designed to enhance communication and both social gaming as well within the game. And there's also going to be group coordination. So this will provide a dedicated UI for Vanguard members to communicate and to set objectives, as well as coordinate activities. It seems then, by and large, in a way, you're kind of be able to create missions. And whilst these may not be official missions in the traditional sense that we have in the game, you can nonetheless set specific objectives that you want your Vanguard members to participate in. Now, it seems pretty obvious to me that these will be able to plug in directly to other areas of the game, whether that's the background simulation, Power Play, that's Power Play 2.0, or indeed the colonization efforts. It would mean that from directly within the game, players will be able to coordinate en masse, whether that's just 3 or 4 or 5 players, or perhaps even hundreds of players. You'll be able to focus all of your attention to achieving a particular goal. And these goals will be set by the Vanguard leader. Now, beyond that, there will also be the ability to set perks, which are provided as a kind of reward for players achieving this collective achievement. Taking things a step further is going to be a banking system. Here, players, or the Vanguard system itself, the Vanguard group, will be able to collectively deposit various different things within the Vanguard bank. And this can be credits, it can be modules, it can even be ships. And players then will be able to withdraw from this, or perhaps the leadership will be able to issue withdrawals to various different members. I'm not quite sure the details on how that would work yet. Frontier haven't discussed the specifics, but it seems pretty obvious that yes, this is going to be a full-on guild system. Basically, you'll be able to join up, participate in joint activities, and also have collective resources that can be shared with the group. Now, if you kind of step back and think about this, in many respects, this is also becoming another permanent feature of the game. As with Colonization, where you set up various space stations and ground bases, all the rest of it, and these have a permanent impact on the game that other players can see, we're doing with these Vanguard systems, these effectively organizations. These would also be permanent in many respects. As a Vanguard leader, you could perhaps set up a Vanguard, a group, a guild, an organization, whatever you want to call it, and when you log out, that organization is still going to persist, and any objective you've set will be there for other players to participate in. This, at its heart, at its very center, the foundational idea of this is player-generated content, isn't it? This is dynamic content that the players themselves are creating and being involved with, and that is going kind of hand in hand with Colonization, which is very similar from that point of view. So let's take a look at all these things together, and taken together, I do believe they paint quite a vivid picture of the direction Frontier are heading in with Elite Dangerous. Now, to be perfectly clear here, everything I say next is entirely my opinion. This is speculation. This isn't an official statement, not by any means, from Frontier. It's basically my thoughts on what we've seen so far, just so I'm just piecing the pieces together, placing the puzzle together, as it were. Quite clearly, they're not just adding different elements or extra content to Elite. Instead, what they appear to be doing is expanding the overall concept of Elite Dangerous as an MMO. What do I mean by that? It might seem a bit of a strange statement. Well, Elite Dangerous has always had connectivity, a massive galaxy, and player interactions. It has never functioned like a true MMO in the way that games like EVE Online or World of Warcraft do. Instead, Elite has primarily been a shared world space sim, a game where players exist in the same universe, but mostly operate independently without deeply structured social and economic systems driving the overall experience. Now, some players might argue that Elite has always been an MMO because of systems like the background simulation and power play. But whilst those elements create persistence, they don't actually function like traditional MMO mechanics. In reality, they have always been NPC-driven, systems where players contribute but never fully control the outcomes. What we're seeing here now with Vanguard and Trailblazers is a major shift. It's a shift that is going to dramatically change the overall nature of the game. It's going to be one where players are finally stepping into the driver's seat and shaping the game world in a way that was never before possible. What this means is there is a significant shift going on here. For the first time, Elite Dangerous is moving beyond simply allowing players to influence the galaxy. It's now giving them the ability to directly shape and expand it. Previously, mechanics like the background simulation, the BGS, and power play provided ways for players to push the game's economy and politics in different directions. But ultimately, these systems were NPC-driven. Any progress was a reflection of accumulated player actions rather than true player ownership or governance. Now, with Trailblazers and Vanguard, we're seeing something fundamentally different. Players are no longer just influencing the universe, which is controlled by NPCs. Instead, they are actively creating and leading within it. So Trailblazers, the colonization, it makes colonization a player-driven process. This allows players to establish new settlements, dictate economies, and leave permanent marks on the galaxy, something that was previously only possible through developer intervention. Meanwhile, Vanguard is going to introduce a fully structured, persistent social system, and this resembles the guilds and corporations found in traditional MMOs. So with shared objectives, leadership structures, and resource pooling, Vanguard gives players the tools to coordinate on a scale that was never before possible in Elite. Taken together, these updates really do transform Elite from a shared world space sim into something much bigger. It's going to be an evolving, player-driven MMO where actions have lasting consequences on the galaxy itself, and these, as I say, are not NPC-driven influence changes, but rather direct player changes. Again, all of that is just my opinion, it's just speculation, but, well, it all does seem to fit the past, doesn't it? It does seem to be the direction everything's heading in, doesn't it? And I don't think Frontier are going to stop there. I suspect that this is a direction that Frontier are going to continue to go on, and that means probably the end-of-year update is going to be similarly related, in other words, further refining and expanding Elite Dangerous as a true MMO, giving it far more depth than it's ever had before. It's something that's really nice to see, and I'm glad Frontier are doing this. Do let me know your thoughts and feelings about all of this in the comments section below, because I'd love to hear from you. As always, thanks for watching this video all the way through. Do take care, and I'll catch you next time. And by the way, there is another video on the screen right here if you want to watch that one.